Well, hello, everybody who are coming in. I think we still got more people coming in, but thank you guys so much for joining today.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
All right.
It's just letting them in slowly.
4 people enter the waiting room. Yeah. I can only see our original view over here, but all right. Should we get going? So, welcome to everybody.
Hello, hello.
And we'll just continue admitting people as they come. So welcome to the Singing Matters panel discussion. We have a great discussion coming up for you all, and hopefully you all find this to be informative, inspiring, and any number of other fun adjectives. But we have a really exciting group of guest panelists that are joining us today to talk about why singing is important, especially why it's important today in this crazy year of 2020 in the midst of a pandemic when it seems like we shouldn't be able to sing, but why it's essential, why it's transformative, and why it's powerful. And so I'm going to just go through and do some quick introductions of our guest panelists here. First up, we have Abigail Fischer. Abigail is a versatile soprano who's made a vibrant career starring in contemporary operas such as Missy Mazzoli's Song from the Uproar and Du Yoon's 2017 Pulitzer Prize-winning Angel's Bone, as well as in more classic operas such as Dido and Aeneas, Carmen and Cenerentola, with companies such as the Los Angeles Opera, Chautauqua Opera, and Cincinnati Opera. Abigail has performed Handel's Messiah with Kansas City Symphony, Milwaukee Symphony, Rhode Island Symphony, Virginia Symphony, and in other repertoire with the Columbus Symphony, Boston Symphony Orchestra, and Los Angeles Philharmonic. As an early music performer, she has worked with the American Bach soloists, Rebel Baroque, Early Music New York, Boston Baroque, and Mercury Houston. Trained as a cellist, Ms. Fischer has worked often also as a vocal chamber musician, from the Marlborough Music Festival and Chamber Music Northwest to St. Luke's Chamber Ensemble. During the pandemic, Abigail birthed abigaum.com, offering sound meditation, mindful listening programs, and meditative music as a way to connect deeper within for authentic communication, calm, focus, and purpose, which is exactly why we asked her to be part of this discussion today. So Abigail, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
And please check out her sound meditations. They are just magnificent, just so wonderful.
We use
Thank
them.
you so
We use
much.
them quite often.
I'm gonna, that's so great. I'm so glad to hear that they've been a resource, which is of course the whole point. And I'll just put that website in the chat just so you can
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
We bring it up a little bit later, but yeah, go for it. All right, so next up is Dr. John Seesholz. And sorry, John, for spelling your name in various different ways, but I see it on your Facebook in different ways. But John Seesholz is a baritone who holds vocal performance and pedagogy degrees from the University of Michigan, the University of Texas at San Antonio, and the University of North Texas. His most recent operatic performances include Florencia en el Amazonas, Verdi's Otello, Faust, Candide, Così fan tutte, Pagliacci, and Verdi's Falstaff and Johnny Schicchi. That's not Verdi's Johnny Schicchi. Puccini's Johnny Schicchi. Some of his solo concert performances include Carmina Burana, Brahms' Requiem, Fauré's Requiem, Mozart's Requiem, lots of requiems, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Nielsen's Symphony No. 3, The Five Mystical Songs, and Sea Symphony, Dona Nobis Pacem by Vaughan Williams. He has traveled Europe performing both opera and art song. In 2006, he made his Italian debut in Venice, performing Guglielmo in Così fan tutte as part of the Goldoni Teatro Festival Italia. In 2014, he debuted new arrangements of the Old American Songs for baritone and chamber wind ensemble by Copland in 4 countries, Austria, Germany, Hungary, and Slovakia. Some of his awards include finalist for the Marola San Francisco Opera Program and the Irwin Bushman Award as a NATSA finalist. This past year, he performed art song recitals throughout Colorado and Texas, excuse me, as well as a performance with the Colorado Symphony in a semi-staged production of La Boheme. In February, he performed as part of the CSU Museum Concert Series, co-presented as a lecture on the developing male vocalist at the Texas Music Educators Association, performed a recital at the University of Texas, San Antonio, gave master classes in the South Texas region, and performed the song cycle Let Us Garlands Bring by Finzi on 2 concerts with the Denver Art Song Project. He is scheduled to sing 9 performances in the coming year with Denver Art Song Project, which is now called Art Song Colorado, which John is an active member and a board member as well, and a performance of the Liebeslieder Waltzes, baritone solos of Carmina Burana, and numerous performances at Colorado State University. This seems like it may be from a little while ago, but nonetheless, John is doing some incredible things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. But we've known John for quite some time. He's a dear friend, an amazing vocal pedagogue and voice scientist, and we're very excited to have him join us. So thank you for joining today.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Always a joy.
Next up is Dr. Maryann Kyle. So in high demand as a coach and teacher of various styles of singing, Maryann Kyle has dedicated her professional life to guiding singers and teachers in their pursuit, not only of exceptional singing, but also captivating performance. Kyle has extensive experience teaching, coaching, and performing many genres of music, and specializes in the technique of musical theater, high and power belting. He is the creator of the Pedagogy of Style, which focuses on the integration of the voice and style into the total actor, and is an active mentor of performers and teachers in the development of their creative language. Maryann Kyle is an active performer of multiple genres and has shared the concert stage with some of the world's greatest artists, including internationally known mezzo-soprano Denise Graves, famed bass baritone William Warfield, Patti LaBelle, Dionne Warwick, and Patty Austin. Kyle leads the Teacher Fellowship Program at the International Performing Arts Institute, or EPI, in Germany. By the way, EPI is co-sponsoring this webinar today, so thank you to EPI. She is a professor and graduate studies chair at the University of Mobile.
She was our voice teacher in our doctorates and one of our dearest friends and biggest mentors, and we are forever grateful that she's with us today and just in life.
Thank you, Maryann. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
Next up, we have Mandy Harvey. Mandy Harvey is a singer-songwriter, author, and speaker who happens to be deaf. She is signed with SRG and managed by Kevin Jonas Sr. Mandy was Simon Cowell's Golden Buzzer pick on America's Got Talent several years ago. The video has collectively received over 500 million views. Wow, I didn't know that. Mandy uses her talent and artistry to encourage others, which can be seen by her many acts as part of nonprofit organizations such as No Barriers USA and work for Music Not Impossible with Not Impossible Labs. Her heart is to help others achieve their dreams by encouraging them to try and move forward as a community. Mandy Harvey was featured in NBC Nightly News, Great Big Story, Vacations of the Brave, Music Not Impossible, the LA Times, Dr. Oz, Pickler and Ben, and America's Got Talent, Today Show, Access Hollywood, Steve Harvey, and more. And we actually went to school with Mandy for a while as she was going deaf years ago at Colorado State University. And I don't think I've ever watched America's Got Talent except for the season that she was on, and we were like glued to the screen.
It's okay. I haven't watched any of them, even the season I was on, so it's okay. But it is weird. It's beautiful to have been able to be a part of the same history. So
yes, it is so great to see you and to be here with you after many years. We haven't seen each other for so long. It's so great. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And last but not least is Cynthia Vaughn. Cynthia Vaughn is a Colorado native who has been singing for as long as she can remember. She has performed opera, concerts, and musical theater across the country from San Francisco to New York. She has been writing, presenting, and teaching singing for nearly 40 years at universities, summer programs, and independent voice studios. Cynthia founded the original Magnolia Music Studio on Magnolia Street in Fort Collins, Colorado in 2008. She relocated to Richland, Washington in 2014 to join her husband and is the owner and director of one of 9 teachers at Magnolia Music Studios, Riverwalk. Cynthia has a passion for community and mentoring. Magnolia is a place for singers and instrumentalists of all ages, experience, and musical styles to explore their creativity and make music an integral part of their life and wellness. In addition to competitive high school students and avocational adult performers, Cynthia particularly enjoys working with older adult singers who find joy, purpose, and connection in song. Cynthia Vaughn and the late Mary Beth Dane, PhD, are co-authors of the leading college voice class text and anthology, The Singing Book. She carries the book's philosophy into her studio lessons. Sing first, talk about it later. Love it. Thank you, Cynthia, for joining us today.
And thank all of you for being here with us.
Cynthia has been a mentor. She was our teacher in undergrad, and she's been a mentor for many years. And I remember using, I think it was the first edition of the Singing Book in a voice class that I took before I was a voice major. And then you helped convince me to audition for the voice program. So I have to thank you for a large part of my path.
I also should thank you for that, because that's why we're here. So thank you, Cynthia.
Cool. Well, let's get right down to it. So the first question that we have to ask you is, why do you sing? This is a question we ask our students all the time, and it's something that I think many of us ponder, but don't always come up with great answers for, or helpful answers for. So let's go ahead and start with Mandy, since you're on the screen right now. Why don't we start with you? Why do you sing, and how do you use singing in your life and your career?
I was introduced to singing when I was about 4 years old, and it was the first time when I was a part of choir that I could actually see the sheet music and be a part of the conversation. Because I grew up hard of hearing, it was always a difficulty because I never understood conversation. And to be able to see the words in black and white, it was the first time that I felt like I wasn't just stupid, I was a part of everybody else. And the reason why I wanted to become a music teacher was because I wanted to bring that connection and that community to other people. And so the reason why I sing, I put in so much work for other people to be able to have that same connection, other people to be able to have the words to say the things that maybe they don't have the words to say. And if I can give them that, then it's a beautiful, powerful process.
Beautiful answer. Thank you.
How do you feel like, this is not one of the questions that we sent to you guys, but how do you feel like your hearing loss has, I mean, obviously that's right off the bat, that seems like a major detriment to any singer.
No,
right?
but it's not. Like, everybody sees it as a detriment, but really what they don't understand is the freedom.
Right.
Because
So
I don't have the ability to judge myself. I don't have the ability to pick myself apart or criticize. I don't have the ability to sound like somebody else. I get to be 100% myself all the time. And how many people can say that? So to all of the people who feel like I'm sad and in a little hole or not getting enough, to me, I say, I wish you could understand my perspective, because you're missing out, not me.
wow.
I want to share something as Mandy's former voice teacher. I did not hear Mandy's true, authentic voice until she lost her hearing.
Yes.
Wow.
You that knew Mandy in college, and I taught her all through middle school, high school, college, and you hear her voice now. It's not the same voice.
It's not.
No.
I will
I
attest.
was just scared, you know, like those kids that you see them and maybe you are that person who would, you know, you had to actually sing in front of people and you could feel your hands like going cold and your whole body shaking and you're just trying to get through that last note before you pass out and you just want to run away and cry. That was debilitating and that was how my life was in every aspect. And until I became free of myself, I didn't really sing. I just did the best that I could, but now it's not just the act of singing, it's actual expression. And it has been the biggest gift I've ever had in my life. And to also be surrounded by incredible people like Cynthia, who pushed me past my comfort zone, um, even before I lost my hearing, to do things like I never would have dreamed before, like audition for things or have to, you know, put in that work and effort. It has changed how I communicate and also just how I feel every day. And it's an unbelievable gift.
Wow.
That's very powerful, Mandy.
When
Thanks for
Mandy
sharing.
would do something like singing at Nats, it cost her so much. As a teacher, she wanted to do these things, but to see how she would become physically sick and just so incredibly nervous and work so hard to just perfect everything, and it would break my heart. And that is not the Mandy that you see in here now. She is just a beautiful butterfly.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't care anymore. I just sing.
I love that.
Well,
Cynthia, can we extend the same question to you?
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is such a beautiful segue, because my short answer to why do you sing is because nobody told me to shut up. And that is so true. And I've worked with adults who, you know, a third grade teacher said, "Oh, you just mouth the words," or "You should really think about being in the band." And I mean, I work with adults who are 40 and 50 years old who will cry in a lesson when they finally release that heart song. And it's been there their whole lives. And now they have the time and the income to take singing lessons. And it's just incredible. So yes, I sing because fortunately, no one told me to shut up except my little sisters, and I didn't care. I grew up just singing all the time. I sang at play, I sang at work. I made up some of the most incredible dishwashing songs you would ever want to hear, just always singing. And I
That
have fond memories of going to my grandparents' house, and I would immediately head downstairs to Grandpa's piano in the basement. And 2 hours later, my parents would say, "You need to come upstairs and say goodbye to your grandparents." And I'm like, "Okay." And the other thing that happened at my grandparents' house is I would go outdoors when when there wasn't a blizzard in Colorado. And there was a huge tree in the yard with a swing. And the swing was attached from the big branches away from the trunk of the tree. So I could swing really, really high. And my goal, I never made it, but I thought if I reach far enough, swing high enough, my toe is going to touch the tree. But what I did on that swing, so when I think of the word sing, my brain puts a W in there and adds swing. And singing on that swing in my grandparents' yard is where this little girl dreamed. And no one ever, weirdly, no one like ever walked down the driveway and said, "What are you doing, kid? That's stupid. Stop singing." No one told me to shut up. I sang at the top of my lungs. That's where my opera voice was developed, I'm sure. And one of the songs that I remember from my grandparents' piano bench was a song called "Far Away Places with Strange Sounding Names, Far Away Over the Sea." And it's about traveling and going places. And that's why I sing. Music has allowed me to do all of those things, and nobody told me to shut up.
Oh, I love it.
Thank God.
You said at the very beginning of that, you said something about your heart song, and we call Sing for Your Life, what we teach is heart singing. And so when you said that, it was like, this is exactly it. And you have embodied that. I remember being a freshman and you sang a recital, and I told you afterwards that I was mesmerized by you because I was so pulled in to your heart song, to your heart space. And you shared that so honestly. And I'm thankful that I was there for that. Thank you. Maryann, can we ask you to chime in?
Well, I tell people this all the time. I said my singing started because it was something I was good at and I was terrible at math. And so I was bad at math and good at singing. And I went to Catholic school, and the nuns were always pushing me up to the podium as a 5-year-old singing Ave Maria in Latin. But I have to tell you that a large journey in my life as a singer and as a teacher has been what I call the great getting over myself. And the reason I can tell you today that I sing is because I learned, like Mandy and Cynthia both talked about, I learned not to listen to my voice as much as feel my voice. And what happened is 21-year-old hyperdrive Maryann Kyle, who thought that that was productive behavior, became 40 something year old hyperdrive. And I realized that that was anxiety. And when I sang, I got calmer. And the interesting thing is, once I got calm, I could actually release myself from listening to the quality of my voice and feel the voice instead. And then I became aware of things like not my tone, not my technique, which was present. I became aware of things like musical language, the composer's language for love, for art, for poetry. I couldn't be aware of it while I was listening to the tone of my voice. It was almost as if I were deaf to that language. But the minute I began to feel my voice more, not only did my everything about me calm down, but I could see and hear those things that were there. The beautiful thing about it is thankfully it translated to my teaching as well, because what I do is use that physical and emotional empathy with my students all the time, and I'm able to feel a lot of times physically what they're doing as they're singing. So they call it my unicorn horn. It's not magic. But it is just that I got to a point with my own singing where it became the thing that calmed me down. And oddly enough, I could be singing Puccini at the top of my lungs, and it actually, if you check my heart rate and my mental being, it's just very calm as I do that. And that's, I think, when you discover how much you love the art form of singing, is when you can get to that point where your brain is quiet for a moment, filled with your own criticism. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you guys are mentioning so many things that are just so spot on with what we go over in these workshops, and it probably came from you a lot as mentors of ours. But
yes.
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
This is, I mean, that's perfect. And I think you're probably the first person who put language to that for us. You always used to say, "Don't analyze, create." And so from that, we learned what it feels like to be in the moment. And John and I talk all the time about music as like a meditation, that when we are singing, when we're on stage, when we're practicing, when we are in our most meditative state, because we're so present in every moment as it unfolds, if we allow that, if we are not in judgment place.
There's some really, really cool science that goes behind it,
it's
explains
great.
all of that stuff. That
It's
how
great.
singing activates your parasympathetic nervous system and all of the oxytocin and serotonin that you create. But
It's amazing too how when you get to that place, how your technique actually rises to a higher level. I'm into this nerd, stuff right now, where I'm thinking about how to, with teachers, to connect what the right and left brain are doing in such a way that they don't analyze themselves to death. And it's always incredible to me how the technique is elevated the minute you just allow yourself to experience the music.
yeah,
100%.
Absolutely.
John, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, thank you for inviting me, and it's so great to see everyone's beautiful faces. And I do apologize, I ended up sending you an older bio. I think that was from 2017.
That's
I am
okay.
the director of vocal pedagogy at CU Boulder, and I used to work at Colorado State University, of course, and that's how I met Cynthia, and then I met Maryann through Cody Lown. So it's great to see everyone. And you just mentioned what I was thinking about was, meditation and performing. And I think singing for me has evolved so much, like even within the past 2 to 3 years, just like how it's defined within my life. I always had a struggle between once I got through academia and started performing, I confused the love of singing with performing. And like that I needed to be out and always like producing something for an audience. And so when those things, aren't as plentiful, it messes with like your value. Especially now with COVID and things like that, like you think, well, I'm not producing or I'm not singing as much or this or that. And so I think for me, there's been a real division between singing and performing, and kind of like taking ownership of singing again. And I think that's, Stephanie, when we have bonded over meditation while singing, I figured out that I was giving my best performances when I was in a very meditative state. And I would sometimes even meditate before performing to try to get my headspace there. And I think performers are very different. Like some people, they're like, I need to be so present with that audience. The audience is giving me so much energy and I'm feeding it back to the audience. And there's some people that just like, that's their thing. And for me, it was like rekindling like this intimate relationship with music that I had as a child, as Cynthia mentioned, being, I didn't like to clean my room. And so my mother would send me to my room, for the weekend, basically, to clean. And it probably didn't get done. But I was in there singing, I was in there playing with my toys and singing. I was in the bathtub singing. And these were very like private moments of singing. And so when I get lost in, oh my gosh, this gig is really big and I need to perform well, I call that being lost, because I'm distracted by giving a good performance versus rekindling the love of singing, which is a personal experience. And so I hope that as I teach, that I can help facilitate that transition back to just being a little kid and playing with your toys and singing beautiful music. And I think the audiences, weirdly, they respond to that more so than if you're out there, with your jazz hands.
It's weird.
Yeah,
I think that's very normal. They connect with authenticity. They connect with what's real. And if you're actually feeling what you say, you can feel it as the person in the audience, period. If you don't believe what you say, I'm going to know.
Absolutely.
There has been so much research done recently on the importance of a shared reality in creating connections with people. And when we can create a reality for them to step into and share with us, then that's when it comes to life. And that's when everyone feels what we are trying to share with them, what we are feeling. Yeah. Absolutely. Abby, how about you?
Wow. Such a pleasure to be in this amazing group. Yeah, I mean, I was already, when I started taking voice lessons when I was 17, I was already an accomplished cellist. And so at first it was just following the talent, because I had a natural voice. And then I found out that I had to strip off all these layers like an onion of, first of all, I was already a very accomplished like cellist. So I was like, oh, let's make this happen. Let's like make this music happen, sort of like you would with the bow or in the fingers. But it's actually, I loved, you know, what Mandy was saying, and like, and the hearts, singing with your heart space, you know, it all comes to actually like trust, like singing from the heart. And I found out on the path that I actually had to like become a full human in order to learn how to sing with my full voice. So I was a soprano, very light soprano at first, and then I became a mezzo, and then I became a dramatic soprano eventually, because that was always what I was. But I just had to become a full human. I had to learn how to release a lot of the trauma that I was holding in my body, and how to fully resonate with my whole soul, and how to be fully aligned with my, so I learned Alexander technique and Feldenkrais, and like how to be, you know, how to stand and have self-confidence enough, how to not listen to myself and not to analyze myself, and how to be comfortable standing up there alone. And all of this is just like therapy in order for me to just sing, you know, which is, it's like the full package on like how to be a full human is all written intrinsically in how to sing well, you know.
Boom.
Oh, so perfect. Yes.
I definitely didn't plan on that from the beginning, but it just ended up having this beautiful structure that I'm so grateful for. And I'm so, you know, I'm just so grateful for all my teachers, and you know, my teacher, one of my dear teachers who not only, you know, introduced me to all these things. Oh, well, maybe in order to sing with your whole voice, you need to learn how to breathe deeper, which maybe you need to go to this healer. And she also teaches Feldenkrais, and it's like these layers of that onion, you know, that you start to peel off. And just like anything, like how rich the world is, you know, that sometimes the most profound songs are the simplest songs.
Yeah.
Because it says everything on all the levels, you know, it pierces your heart and fills you with resonance and trust, and that is that connection, Mandy, that you were talking about. Like, you can tell when somebody believes it or not. If it's touching them on the deepest level, it can touch you on the deepest level.
Yes, absolutely. We talk about like from pedagogy perspective, I talk about like finding alignment that'll allow my students to open their bodies and allow their voices to come through unimpeded by all of these habits and thoughts and mental blocks that they have built up. And these become physical habits in our bodies. You know, we create these protective postures. We create these protective ways of using our voice, or of trying to create a specific tone color or a bigger sound or a more dramatic sound, because we think that we should be a certain way. But when we just open ourselves, our voices can come through us unimpeded.
I think this is tied largely to the fact that for us as singers, our breath is the spirit of who we are.
Yes.
And the body itself does not inherently like to be squeezed. Associates it with, you know, drowning or losing one's breath. But I think that we have learned to do all these things with occlusion and all these things we talk about, trying to hold and shape the breath here. And yet when we get into singing, suddenly the body rejects that, because it creates this stopping point for the spirit here rather than letting it go in and out. And I think the singing connection and the spirit connection are so close together. And I think audiences feel that before they hear it. I think they feel it and they have an emotional response based on that feeling.
Yeah,
absolutely.
One of the workshops that we do is we actually talk about the synonymous nature of breath and spirit in a lot of ancient languages. And like in ancient Greek, pneuma means both spirit and breath. There are a number of different languages where those two words in English are actually the same word in these other languages.
We inspire air and expire. It's to breathe in the spirit.
Cynthia, what were you going to say?
Something I remember my mentor, Mary Beth Dame, saying often when people would get pretty far in the weeds about technique, she would just remind us that she would say, your body knows how to breathe. your body knows how to sing. And just kind of pull it back.
Absolutely. Yeah. I tell my students a similar thing, that your body intuitively knows how to sing really well, but you get in your own way. We all do. I mean, we get in our own way. And so part of the process of learning to sing is learning how to get out of your way, how to peel back those layers of the onion that Abby was talking about. Absolutely. So this question of why do you sing is something that I ask my students every semester, and they get sick of me asking it, I'm sure, but I think I probably ask this of everybody because it's a question that I have been trying to find an answer for myself for a long, long time. I remember I didn't actually start singing until relatively late. As a teenager, I had never really sung. I just, on a whim, decided to audition for Oklahoma my junior year of high school. And I went to a really tiny little high school where there wasn't a huge music program, and I got cast as Curly because I had a voice and nobody I could match pitch, sort of. and that kind of started things. But I really wanted to be a rock star, and I told my parents I wanted to be a rock star, and they said, "Okay, why?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, because it would be awesome." What do you mean why? I'd never thought about why, but it made me think, and I've been thinking about why ever since, and that was 20 years ago. And so that's really this Sing for Your Lives workshop series that we have created has in large part kind of stemmed from us talking about this. Why do we do this? What do we contribute to society? What do we contribute to the world with our voices? Why is what we do of any importance when it's, it seems we have all this information, all of this evidence to show us otherwise, that, hey, well, budgets are being cut, we got to get rid of music and the arts. And well, it's a fun entertainment that we go to do. The lawyers and the doctors will, after a long stressful week at the office, they'll come to a show so that they can kind of forget about their problems for a couple of hours and be distracted from it. And
it's divertisement from reality.
Divertisement, right? And so,
but I think it's always been so much deeper. It's always been so much deeper than distraction.
Absolutely.
It is a form of processing. We give people an ability to process their life and process the difficulty that they deal with as much as the joy and the highs, and to be able to be there and to say that those emotions that you're feeling is something that an emotion that somebody else has felt as well, makes them feel like they're not alone. And it's so much more than just passing the time. It is a way for us to connect as humans and to grow in a emotional maturity that we would not be able to do on our own.
Absolutely. And I think anybody who's been singing for long enough at some level understands all that. Like, they know, and I've always, I knew all along, there's got to be more to it than just entertaining and doing this kind of frivolous thing that I keep hearing from everybody that, oh, that's nice, but what do you do for a real job? What is your real living? And it's like, no, it goes way deeper than that. But it has always been really difficult to articulate why it's important. Why do we do this? Why do we put ourselves through degree after degree after degree, and countless negative responses from people and failed auditions and all of this stuff? Why do we do this to ourselves for something that is frivolous or that's just mere entertainment? And the answer was always, it's got to be more than that. And so we've been doing so much research into why do we feel the way we feel about this? What is really behind all of that? And so that's really a big part of what these workshops are all about.
And it's important also, I think, for us to understand the importance of what we do, understand our purpose, and to be able to communicate that so that we can defend it, because I think
we need to be advocates for music and for music education. So yeah, there's so much into why we do what we do. I think that's important. But what would you say, let's go back through, since Mandy, we started with you and you're still up on our screen at least. In what ways is singing foundational or essential to the human experience. And you talked about some of this already, but what do you have for that?
It's about connecting. I think in the end, a person needs to feel like they belong. They need to have a place where they feel safe and a place where they feel comfortable enough to be their true selves. And with music, it is the biggest way of allowing people to be their true self. If you think about all of the biggest moments of your life, you think about all of the colors that you've seen, and all the smells that you've had, and all of the music that you've heard. There are songs that make you cry, and there are songs that make you just dance. And it's there because it is grasped onto your desperation to be connected to somebody else. And I think that music on a deep level, the foundation of it is it's human. It doesn't matter where you are in any culture, any language. We've developed our own dance, we've developed our own art, we've developed our own music. It is a universal language that we share so that we can become more than just ourselves. And there's such a magic that happens. There's a biological magic that happens when you have multiple voices stacked in perfect harmony that causes the hair on your arm to stand up on end and tears to swell in your eyes. And it is an overwhelming feeling of belonging. I've always felt an overwhelming feeling. And it is something that if you are stuck in your onion shells and layers, and you turn it too much on you, the pressures of you not being good enough or how you're going to sound, you're missing the point completely. The point is to be with everybody else and to be able to express in a way that allows other people to join in on that passion.
Yeah.
Certainly. That's
Absolutely.
perfect.
Yes. Oh,
Perfect.
I love this conversation so much.
Yeah.
This is so great.
Maryann, what do you think?
Well, I tell my students a lot. We work a lot, particularly when they're singing big operatic pieces. The connection the audience has to singing, and the connection I think humanity has to singing. I mean, not that other forms of music, instrumental music, are not profound in their impact, but one of the most profound things we have is language. And the sonic quality of singing is something that they can feel. They can feel the synthetic vibrations. They can feel physically what we're doing and have a positive or hopefully not a negative reaction to it. But language is where we connect them to our story. And so whatever we're teaching as singers and as teachers, to corrupt the language just solely for the sake of the voice takes away one of the key elements that connects us as singers to the audience, and that's our story. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to remember that all these other things are beautiful, but in the end, when they want to be transported to our reality or have our reality become their reality, it's through the story. And the story is transmitted through the language, the poetry, the libretto, and the musical language of the composer. And so getting us to value that story, I tell my students quite a bit, your voice is not the thing. Your voice serves the music. It serves the text, the journey. And that changes the ballgame for them because they realize where the connection lies and how much they can play with their own journey through text and text delivery. And so that, I think, is a unique point for us as singers.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. I just heard a podcast from, I think it was Vermont Public Radio, that was talking about research. There are some researchers that are looking into the possibility that singing actually predates language in humans, possibly. They don't know. It's kind of hard to go back and check that out, but
Forgive me to indulge my nerd for like 30 seconds, but I'm now reading into all of this research. John, I've gone totally nerd on this. I'm reading into all this research that the doctors have done into why it is that stroke victims can recover by singing more quickly their language facility than by speaking. It's that whole Mel Tillis stuttered when he spoke, but he didn't when he sang. Yeah. And so using that idea to help recover language in people who have had some sort of issue. So yeah, sorry.
Mhm.
Oh,
No, we
So
had
amazing.
a firsthand experience of that exact thing. It wasn't a stroke victim. It was somebody that had advanced Parkinson's, and it was at one of my friend's graduation parties, I think from college, and her uncle was there, and he had this really intense Parkinson's with a lot of tremors, and he could get locked up. But he was a singer-songwriter in his previous life, and so somebody handed him a guitar, and all of his symptoms just vanished. Like he could strum, he could hit every note and chord, he could sing without a stutter, but as soon as the music stopped, he would get locked up again. It was incredibly magical.
It's an amazing and powerful thing I think for us as voice teachers to be able to study that and understand it. John, when he's speaking about his own singing, that's a powerful level to talk about. The creative process and rehearsing is more important than being after the performance. I think for us as teachers and as singers to be able to explore all of these things adds so much to our students, and these are the future generations of those who will support the arts, perform in the arts, teach in the arts, or all of the above. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think we're moving in that direction pedagogically. I think we spent a lot of time in the 20th century picking everything apart into little sections, and these are the little parts, breaking everything down to small portions of the voice. And I think we're getting back to that kind of gestalt idea that it's the total body. And I think even now these conversations, we're getting into, it's spiritual too. It's holistic, as Abigail was saying, or just said in the chat, you the exact words. But yeah, I think that there's that cross sphere thing, even if we're just talking about the brain, that allows people to access words they can't speak, stutters and things like that, being cured by bringing in singing. And I think that the teachers too that have had the most profound influence on singers are the ones that are thinking about the big picture. And and that's coming from me, the director of vocal pedagogy. I should be breaking everything down to a rytmanoid power or something, but but I think that when we really want to move people, it comes back to what Maryann was saying, which is we're storytellers, and we're doing something that is we don't quite understand yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's why we created Sing for Your Lives. I think we wanted to understand how that all fits, and how we can use our voices better to transform ourselves, but also our communities, our audiences, and by extension, the world, and to heal, because it's a profound thing to sing.
Certainly.
Yeah, so
Cynthia, what are your Abby?
Sorry, Abby.
Abby, what are your
yeah.
thoughts?
Well, I just want to, can I just put something in here right now?
Please,
I work a lot with, like, I've started to work a lot more with, therapy, sound and breath as therapy, specifically, and to help release trauma. And so that's the direct experience of like breath and sound as therapy. And so it's just such a beautiful, and the therapy using sound for, like, breath work or breath work for like an hour at a time can actually give you the experience to alleviate your trauma, alleviate your human suffering into an experience that's more universal. And then you come back and you're resonating with the voice with the breath in a very universal way, but it's specific because it's in the resonance of your own body. And I've been thinking a lot about that, but I was really loving what you were saying, Maryann, like about the language brings, and the language and the story brings the specificity of that exact human experience, which is something that helps us resonate with the universality of the human experience, which is, you know, it's both so meta and micro, and like that we're seeing our own story resonate in different ways and different other, you know, stories, but both in the resonance of empathy and in this beautiful music. And it's just so many different levels. I just wanted to, you know.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's, you know, right on the money.
I remember a few years back seeing Maryann Kyle give a master class at CSU. Maybe it was like,
Oh, you muted.
Uh-oh.
You muted.
darn it, am I back?
Yeah, you're back
Yeah,
now.
you're back.
Yeah, I think it was 2016, Maryann, you were at CSU giving a master class, and you asked a student to breathe in the emotion that you wanted them to sing in the phrase. And I remember at the time I was like, set up the way you want to sound. And that I was saying things like that at the time, like you know, you want that tone to be, you know, rich or full or chiaroscuro, breathe in the way. And it was the first time I had heard somebody, you know, say like breathe in happiness or like breathe in sadness and get such a positive outcome. So I've been stealing you and quoting you for, you know, a good 4 years now. And
Yeah.
You know,
We steal and quote all the time. All of you.
You know, it's really funny because I work with a lot of musical theater singers as well as classical singers, and I tell them you have to identify in each character a heart trait or a spirit trait. So, I mean, if I'm Tosca and I've just murdered Scarpia, I don't want to take murderous rage breaths every time I start to sing after that point. But I talk to them about this idea of each character, each person having a spirit trait that is a good trait, a God trait, as I would say. And that trait is present even when the circumstances of life, which is what they're saying, and the melody, even when the circumstances of life are impacting that, the spirit trait is there. And that's the thing that allows the audience to still love the character, even though some despicable things might be happening at the time. And I'll tell you, John, that's breathing in that spirit trait changes the game for these kiddos when they're singing Verdi, when they're singing Wagner, and they're singing Puccini, because they don't over muscularize to set up. And I know I went on that journey myself where I was like ready to sing. So it really has changed. But anyway, thank you for quoting me. Steal away.
Cool. Cynthia.
Yeah, it's as I've been listening to everyone, and the second part of that question is, how is singing fundamental or essential to humanity? We all came to the universality of it. And music is in every culture. And it reminded me of about 12 years ago when I was teaching a summer program in Italy, the Art Connects International. I don't remember if you came over there with Dr. Kim and joined us, but anyway, I was on a break day. I was at a beach in Italy, and the water was too cold. I wasn't going in there, so I'm on the beach. And there was a group of Italian grandmothers who were just, you know, sitting in their little group watching the little naked toddlers, you know, while the mothers and fathers were out in the water. They started singing and just, you know, singing favorite songs. And of course, I'm sitting there trying not to be rude and American, and but the music just drew me in. And one of the Italian grandmothers, she just motions me over, and I especially at that moment, my Italian language just went bloop. You know, it's like I did know a bit of Italian, but not at that moment. They knew not a word of English, and she motioned to me, and I knew she was asking me to sing. You know, if I was going to be, you know, listening to them, I had to sing for them as well. And I just opened my mouth and sang, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." And they're like, "Ah!" And just sang that simple little song that I'd learned in childhood. And it was one of the most magical moments, because in that moment, we were the same.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter that my Italian was terrible and they couldn't speak English. In that moment, we were speaking the same language, and it was just magical. I think it was Mandy talked about those moments where it was every little hair on the back of your neck stood up. And this was not a performance in any way. Even my colleagues or students who were there on that trip, they didn't know that happened. It was just this quiet little moment on a beach in Italy, and we connected as humans, and it was really, really quite something. And I want to interject something here, going back to what I said about how free I felt singing as a child. Something that I don't think I've ever told anybody is that starting in high school, I started losing that little girl, because as the stakes became higher, as I won more awards, as I was the lead in the school musical, as I made it through many layers of competition to finally make it to Texas All-State Choir, which only John knows what I'm talking about. Texas Music Educators Association is like nothing else in the country. So a lot of good things were happening. And so my life was being transformed by opportunity. But every opportunity cost me something. And even before I graduated from high school, and I knew at that point I was going to have a scholarship, I was going to go off to college, my mother took me to the doctor and she said, my daughter's hair is falling out. And it was anxiety. The doctor just said, well, it's anxiety. Are you under any stress? And so much of the stress that I was under was self-induced, because those of you you're very accomplished musicians, is there anybody else who, the more accomplished you became and the more you were placed in the spotlight and the more praise you garnered, you felt like it's not enough? I mean, I didn't know that imposter syndrome was a thing, but that I'm sure that's what it was. And it really was not until 20 years ago. And really, I would credit meeting Mary Beth Dame and meeting her as a colleague and reading the book at that time was called Creating Confidence. And it was about not giving away your personal power and finding your true authentic voice in every way. And that started a journey that took me back to the little girl in the swing. And I will tell you right now, I am 100%, I feel like, 98%, because we all have days. But I am the little girl on the swing, and I love to sing.
Yeah.
And I would say at my most successful, singing with a huge chorus and behind me and an orchestra and there in the glittery gown, I was not the girl on the swing. And I did not love singing. There were moments like in that recital you mentioned, but there were moments, and it happened more in art song than in the bigger things or in music theater. But I'm the girl on the swing.
I'm so proud of you. I also think that it goes back to that initial question that we asked when we first started this conversation is, why do you sing? And I think that that's the thing that gets lost, because with the competitions, with the pressure, with people trying to cut each other down because there's only one slot and 30,000 people who are auditioning for it, there is a moment that you have to catch yourself and say, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to put myself in this position? And if your thought is, I want the attention, or I want the fame, or I want people to recognize my work ethic, I feel like you're doing something wrong, because if in the end of it, you're not that little girl on the swing, then you're missing the point. And to be able to get to a point where the most profound performance of your life is to that one random stranger and the two of you just connected in a deep emotional way, versus standing on a stage and being the lead in Aida, like it can be just as big. And you have to understand the power of human connection, and to also realize that with with all of the things that you're doing, with all of the crazy things, you know, because there's some people out there who are going to audition for everything and they're never going to make anything. That doesn't mean that the impact that they have is any less than the person who is standing on the stage of America's Got Talent. You know, like they have the exact same impact to the people who are around them, and it's a ripple effect. So it's like to be able to be stripped down and to understand that you are just a girl on a swing, that that is the one thing that people will really truly understand, and then it will transcend way past what you could ever possibly imagine.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
That
Mandy.
was so beautiful. So
And
beautiful.
I would like to add, if your hair is falling out in clumps, that is your body telling you something.
Slow the freak down.
Or if
Right.
your blood pressure is high, I mean, your body will tell you if there's something wrong. So listen to your body as well.
I think we sometimes, I would say, I hear this in my singers and my students quite a bit, that they feel like to be nervous means that they really care about a performance. To feel like they're scared to give a performance means it really matters to them. And I think the opposite. I think if your focus is, whether your focus is on how good you are or how scared you are that you might mess up, your focus is still on yourself. And it's not on the connections that you forge. It's not on the honesty and the authenticity and the emotion in the music. And you can't connect with that.
Right.
There
You're
isn't a
setting
shared
up a
reality
blockade
there.
when you do
And
that.
I really think singing is one of the most selfless things we can do. And this does, speak towards what Cynthia was talking about, imposter syndrome. I think the minute we get over what other people think, get over thyself, as I say over and over again, and it becomes not about what people think of my singing, but about me giving unselfishly of my voice to the art, to the music, to the story. I think it changes the dynamic with the audience. It definitely changes the dynamic with your students when you, as a teacher, are modeling that. I tell my teachers, my doctoral students all the time, don't practice like a teacher. Practice like a singer. Because it's a different clipboard, you're bringing a whole, and I tell them the culture you set up for your practice, not your performance, the culture you set up for yourself and your practice is the culture you will give your students. It's the culture you will carry on stage. What you value can either weaponize your technique or it can make it creative so then you can give something meaningful to yourself first and to the audience second.
Right. Because the purpose for technique is not just to sing well. The purpose for technique is to get our bodies out of the way of our souls so that they can come through and not be impeded by all of this stuff that we have built up, all of these thoughts, all of these reactions that we have, whether those are manifested in some body, some alignment thing or whatever it is. The technique, as you have said, since when did we start? 2011 or whatever. The technique is there to serve the emotion. The technique is not the goal. The technique is the vehicle.
But it's so easy to lose sight of that, to let the technique be the thing, to let that be the goal, to let that be what we're working towards. And it's just so important to keep in mind what the long path is.
And those type A's, you have those students, and I was one of those too, where they're type A. I must do everything right. And really kind of bridging that pedagogical gap between, do you want to be right or do you want to be honest?
That's also like if you are applying for programs, you're still a student and you're applying for like certain programs, and you're getting feedback that like, well, you need to work on your technique a little bit more, and you're trying to actually get out of your own way, but then you're like, okay, you're getting stuck in this, are they going to like me? And you are infusing the energy of lack of confidence in your auditions. That is what people are going to resonate with, as opposed to like resonating in your heart space and sharing the simple truth of your spirit and just doing your best. that is actually probably gonna get you into, regardless of your technique.
Yeah,
like
right.
you're still like, you're always trying to be better technically. But if you like, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on people telling you that you have so much to do still, or are you focusing on recognizing what you do already know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this conversation is so cool because it's hitting a bunch of these concepts that we've been doing all this scientific research on what all this is about. And so when we were talking about resonating your soul and your heart space, singing from your heart, all these different things, a lot of times we think of that as sort of a poetic way to describe how we feel. But what's so cool about this, there's actually what we've uncovered, or we haven't uncovered, we've uncovered the reading on it. Some other scientists have uncovered this. Your heart actually puts out this electromagnetic field that transmits your emotional state to other people, and other people are able to pick up on your emotions because of the literal resonance of your heart, the literal vibrational resonance of your heart and your soul. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is foundational to what we do as singers, because if what we say, don't just assemble the music, animate it. And to animate means to give something soul. And if you're just assembling the music, you're just putting all the notes and the rhythms and the words together and that's it, you're not really doing anything. You're just making pretty noise. But if you're resonating from your heart and you're being emotionally in tune and honest with what you're performing, then you're getting this double effect of sonic resonance, but also heart resonance. And it makes, you always know when somebody's in it and when they're not. Even if you don't hear necessarily, you can always feel the difference between those performances.
Yeah. And what science has found out is that it's the coherence of our thoughts and our emotions that that sort of encodes our emotions into that electromagnetic field. And so when we are thinking and feeling and we are present in the music and we're using it like John and I talk about as a meditation, then that's when that meditation, when that honest emotion is translated into the hearts of our audience without them even necessarily recognizing that this is what's happening. I mean, we had no idea that this was a thing that existed until we started doing the research. And so I think it's so unconscious for us to absorb and for those of us who are empaths, we're like, yeah, I know. But for us to absorb other people's energy and other people's emotional states. And when we open our minds and our hearts in the same direction, then we are sharing the most honest version of ourselves.
Right. And when you do it together with other people on stage, it's just like when we're singing in tune with each other, or when we're singing unison with each other, and those sound waves amplify each other and help to resonate and boost each other. Same thing happens with those heart vibrations, with those emotional vibrations. It amplifies itself so that we get this increased effect when multiple people are doing it together. It's so cool. So let's move to this next, or I think probably our final question here. How is singing transformative? How have you witnessed the transformational power of singing, either in your own life or in somebody else's? So Abby, since you're still up for us, what do you think?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we basically already hit on it.
We kind of did.
We kind of did. Yeah, this conversation kind of went. That was great.
I mean, resonating with I could just sort of quote what everybody else said, and what I said earlier. I just love Cynthia. Love that. That story on the beach. Like, I just think that's so beautiful. And yeah, and like what I said before about, for me, like having to sing with my own voice, it's just becoming more fully human. And I feel like that's like the story of anybody finding their voice is just the story of becoming more fully themselves, and on whatever level and whatever modality, whatever style they're attracted to. And like, You know, I've often found, because I did sort of step aside from my true voice early on, that I've often made decisions by, does this help expand me or does this contract me? And then that's sort of like a summary of like finding my true voice is, does this like release this tension of, like, for example, like self-consciousness? Is this helping to go towards trust or towards resonating in that heart space, like you said? You know, does this expand who I am? Does this help my voice be more full, more authentic?
Yeah.
You know, and that's sort of like the journey of life. You
Yeah.
know? So
Absolutely.
it is
Abby, you said
transformative, period. You know.
that's so perfect. You said at one point in the chat, you said something about using your chakras or like thinking through chakras, which I talk chakras like all day in my studio because it's such, or plexuses, which is like there's a scientific correlation to this, and we talk about that in Sing for Your Lives, but these scientific correlations to points in our bodies where our nerves, like these nervous nerve bundles that exist in our bodies that help to release different hormones, that when we open and when we access, like you talked about, Carmen, right, which is it's a very erotic role, and opening that chakra and opening ourselves to feeling fully every emotion and every sensation in our bodies throughout our entire bodies, because it's not just like, this is not just where our voices live, it's every part of us that comes together in body, soul, mind. Every part of us comes together to create. And yeah, so just the feeling of sort of infusing the fullness of your energy from each of your energy centers, from each experience that you have into your music, and it creates a fuller sense of self, I think.
And a fuller
I
sound.
would like
Yeah.
to say something about it. It's like 12:15 here in the morning, and we're about to eat dinner. Welcome to France. So I'm gonna hop off. But what I wanted to also say is, like, we're talking about connecting and being our true selves and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable enough to express. I think that for so many people, including myself, the biggest barrier that I had initially was allowing myself to choose that that was even possible. I think that if you understand that there are always two choices, you either can choose to try or you don't. And if you don't, you already know what the outcome is. If for the singers who are out there who want to be able to improve, if you don't allow yourself to be wrong and to make mistakes and to make tragic sounds that you're like, good God, what just came out of my throat, you know, like, my God, and just be completely and utterly embarrassed. Like, if you don't allow yourself to get to that point, you're never going to be able to be your true self. You have to be able to embrace the dirty pieces, the messy pieces, and the broken pieces just as much as the ones that work well. And for all of the students and all of the people who might be participants who don't know who their true selves even are yet, understand that that is, for some people, a lifelong journey, and that you get to choose if you're going to work towards it. And you have so many incredible people who are on this panel who have worked and fought to become as authentic as possible and to try to encourage as many students as possible to find that passion in themselves. So if that's as any encouragement as it is to me, it should be to you. This is a moment for you to be a dork and be weird and be awesome. And the discovery of yourself is going to be vast. And I just hope truly from the bottom of my heart that you can put yourself out of your way and actually dig deep and put the emotion that you have. Every single person has felt disappointment. Every single person has felt fear. Every single person has felt some kind of fart of joy. And so if you can harness it, it will change everything.
Yeah.
Mandy, I love you.
I love you so much. And it's not because I've already been drinking wine. I truly do love you, Cynthia. And I wish that we could have this discussion like every week and all the time.
I know,
Like I miss
I
you
know.
guys so much. But I
Oh, we
know that
miss you
there's
too.
so many other brilliant pieces and parts and John and Abigail and chakras and just it's blowing my mind and I can't handle it. But I'm gonna hop off and I just adore you guys and I adore all the work that you're doing and God bless you all. Merry Christmas. I'm just
Thank you.
happy,
Merry
Merry
man.
Christmas.
Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being with us.
of course. Bye.
Enjoy France.
Yes.
Oh, yes, there's fromage waiting. I can see it
Ah,
from
go
here.
get some fromage.
All
Ouais.
right.
Bonne nuit.
All right. Well, where did we leave off then? So we got Abigail, we got Mandy. Let's go with Cynthia.
Yeah. Where I have personally seen the most, witnessed the most transformation is with older adults. I mean, I think the transformation can happen at any time in your life, but I do find myself drawn as I get older. Although my husband has said I've always been an old lady magnet. We could be any when I was in my 20s, like little ladies would just come and sit down next to me and next thing I know, they're showing me all their grandkids and their puppies. And it's like, yeah. So it just, yeah. But particularly as I get older, I think I have a heart for older adults who, now that their families are grown, quite often I work with widows and who grew up at a time where their whole identity was to be a wife and mother, and now they're in their 70s, 80s, and who are they now? And to see, I have actually 3 students in my studio right now who are like 75 to 85. And during this pandemic in particular, I'm so proud of them that they got over the hurdle of the fear of the technology. And if that meant a grandson had to tell them, how to hook up the iPad and how, I mean, they figured out Zoom. And if they didn't, we've had to switch to just a lesson over the phone, but they're doing it, and they will say it is the most important part of their week. And to help these older adults who for the most part don't have any extraordinary mental incapacity or physical incapacity, but they, other than just getting older and trying to figure out what to do with what we are given of the rest of our life, because none of us are taking that for granted, particularly now. There is no guarantee that we have X number of years at any given time. But the other transformation I've seen in older adults that has been amazing and spectacular is what I have personally witnessed in older adults who do have the mental incapacity of Alzheimer's. And my own mother-in-law, from when she, by the time she was my age, I'm 63, she had passed away from Alzheimer's, and she had early onset Alzheimer's in her late 50s. And it's a really devastating thing for anyone to go through, to any family to go through. But my husband and I would see her transform when she picked up her ukulele, and it would calm her. She could sing every song that she'd ever learned, Goodnight Irene, all of the old songs. But when she wasn't playing music, then, I mean, she could even become violent and confused and not the person that my husband recognized as his mother. But as soon as she picked up that ukulele, I mean, the fingers, it's like you talked about the gentleman earlier, Graham, but the fingers would go, I mean, they knew how to play the chords, and that was just amazing. And my last story is when I was in Cincinnati, I was with a group of professional musicians who were hired to go into senior centers and assisted living, and I distinctly remember doing a winter program, and I happened to be playing the piano and singing the Skater's Waltz. Just because I think I was taking a break from singing, it's like, I'll just play. This is easy. Okay, playing the Skater's Waltz, and there was a woman, tiny, tiny little bird-like woman in a shawl, sitting on a sofa, and I was playing this waltz and she stood. Well, first of all, the staff came like running forward because they were not expecting her to stand up, but they like sort of hovered so that if she were going to fall, they were going to catch her. She stood up. She put her arms like this and she waltzed. And she waltzed with her long dead husband. And she waltzed. And the staff, just tears streaming down their face. And I sort of kept playing because I didn't want the moment to end. And then I'm like, oh, I'd wait, she's old. I better like stop, playing. Because I think she would have kept dancing as long as I played. And so I stopped playing, and then she just sat back down and she just went to being just completely unresponsive again. And I mean, the staff were just bawling their eyes out. And I tried to, keep going, finish the program. And later they said the whole time that Mrs. whatever her name was had been in the facility, she had not spoken. She was just completely unresponsive, and she could, physically move. I think they brought her in a wheelchair, and she was sitting on the couch, but they had never, ever, the whole time that she'd been in the facility, seen anything like that. And maybe that was a one-time thing, but I was so shocked at the power, and it was music that did that.
Yeah.
And like you said, somebody said it was the simplest music.
Yeah.
That it was easy to play, and so you just went with that. But that was transformative for her.
I will never forget that moment. I don't know how I finished the program. I think I had 2 more songs to go.
Oh my goodness. There's a documentary called Alive Inside that was on Netflix several years ago, that it talks about how music kind of unlocks people with Alzheimer's. Just brilliant.
It was amazing.
Oh goodness, you got me on that story.
Yeah, and I hope that we will, as a society, as a country, as a world, continue to funnel whatever kind of money needs to go into research into Alzheimer's, and because with other improvements, we're living longer, and I just would hope that our final 20 or 30 years could have the highest quality possible.
Yeah.
And music will be part of that.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
John,
Right.
how about you? How have you noticed the biggest transformations?
There's so many stories, like with students that have been touched through their music, or I was thinking of a student that I had at CSU who performed, When I Am Laid in Earth, and her father had committed suicide recently, and there are just so many instances where music has touched people's lives and has given them a vessel for their emotional state. I feel like I could stay here all night. And I think that's one of the reasons why I continue to teach and continue to do what I'm doing, because it's just this constant affirmation. We deal with a lot of stuff in academia and all of that drama. And, we were just talking about producing, and even academia asks us to constantly be in a state of proving ourselves. And so I think it's really important that all of us think about why we're still doing it, even if we're not on stage, or even if we're not, producing. It's because we see music alive in the hearts of our students, and And we want to make sure that we pass on this lineage of loving music and singing. So it feels, I think as I've aged, I feel like there's more purpose in that I'm giving this connection. I laugh and joke about invoking the spirit of Manuel Garcia II in my pedagogy class, but there's this connection that goes back to long before it's probably ever been recorded. And we get this opportunity on a regular basis to share that with our students. And it makes me feel really grateful that we're sitting here talking about it, and it's making me renew that value. But that's the thing we have to focus on when all that other stuff gets in the way. And it's like meditation. I got to work on it. It's not always present, and we have to bring ourselves back to the present and the now. And every time we're working with a student, being just with that student and sharing that time with them, or on stage doing something that we care about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I wanted to just really quickly answer a question from the chat, and Lisa had actually texted this to me privately, but I think this is good for everyone. She had asked about older students, and have I ever asked the older students to consider making recordings for their family? And I think that is such a valuable thing to do. And I will say it wasn't my idea, it was my students' idea. And I've had two students. One was a gentleman, beautiful baritone, lifelong singer, who was 86 years old, when his granddaughter said she wanted Papa to make some recordings. And he had always done things in a big way. So we didn't just record his lessons in the studio. No, he went to a professional recording studio and paid a professional pianist. And he made not one CD album, but 2 CD albums. And he got on his computer and did the cover art. And it was the most marvelous thing. And about a year after he made those recordings for his family, he passed away. And they have this, the grandchildren, the great grandchildren will always have this CD of the grandfather singing. And another student of mine was inspired by that. She's 75, and she recorded, no, she's 82. So yeah, no, she's also in her 80s. And she recorded a CD for her family. Now we did it here. We didn't go quite as fancy because she wasn't going to spend that kind of money. But she made a CD and gave it to her kids and her grandkids. So if you do work with older singers, encourage them to do that. And if they're like, oh, I'm not good enough, just tell them it's for their family. It is their children and their grandkids and great grandkids will treasure that. I wish I had recordings of my grandpa.
Oh my goodness, what a beautiful gift, like just a piece of their souls to hand on to their families. Oh, it's so beautiful. I love that.
Maryann, we come to you.
Okay. Well, I have a very recent brief story to tell, and this is I have a doctoral student in my studio who's quite accomplished as a singer, but she's also very bright intellectually and is a wonderful teacher. And we were doing some early Strauss songs. They're not often done. And you could see that she was quite a bit locked up into her technique and thinking about things. And I said, we talked about not just Strauss's musical language, but where he was as a young man at this particular period of her life. And and she was looking at this phrase that was problematic. And I said, what if this were a love expression and not a musical phrase? I said, can you allow yourself to just develop the emotion in the space and in the voice and not the technique? And the surprising thing was, it was the first time she allowed herself the luxury of not tending to the garden of the technique. And what was surprising was she sang the phrase and then she just stopped and she just broke down in tears. And I knew for her as a teacher and a singer that that was a threshold moment for her, because she had allowed herself, God forbid we should allow ourselves the luxury of enjoying the emotion of something and enjoying where the composer was at that time, what he or she was feeling or seeing, and allowing ourselves the luxury. That seems, I guess, too indulgent, but her immediate emotional reaction has been a game changer for every lesson since then. She sang a particular Rossini piece this past week that's difficult, but she had taken that one moment and had applied it to this Rossini piece. And it totally changed how she approached it. And I know, and sit in more pride, because as teachers, we're like, you need to get all these people in these conservatories, and you need to be doing this and here, rack it, like John was talking about, academia, rack up that resume so you can make your way up. I know she is going to create a culture for her students in the future. It's going to sow the most beautiful seeds that are going to create the most beautiful flowers, grow the most beautiful flowers. And that pivotal moment of where she had an emotional reaction to her own singing, I think was a key picture for me of the power of the human voice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so when we talk about singing being transformative, and it does, there are, everybody seems, probably, if you think about it, everybody's going to have a story of either themselves or a student or somebody that music changed their life and singing changed their life or changed the course of their life somehow. The cool thing is that it does that on a continual basis, but it actually, what we've found out too is that when we sing, you're actually physically transforming the molecular structure of your body and the bodies of the people around you. The water molecules are vibrating in a different way when you sing this way versus this way. And it's a field of science that we've gotten really deep into. It's something called cymatics, which is, it's the study of how waves and sound create form or inform the way that form happens. And so you are actually changing how your body is put together and how other people's bodies are put together. And I think one of the things that we talked, this actually goes back to how singing is essential. So what modern science of the last century has basically discovered is that everything is at the most basic level, at the subatomic Planckian level, everything is just vibrating energy. There isn't really that much stuff here. It vibrates in a way that our senses perceive it as a solid desk in front of us or our skull or whatever, but it's really just these little tiny bits of vibration. So music is the human way of transposing those little vibrations into vibrations that we can perceive with our ears. It's very literally, like, it's the most fundamental thing that we can experience. And like we watched this a show about somebody who was making first contact with a tribe from the Amazon. And the first thing these people from this tribe did when they made contact with outside people was they sang a song. Like, that was the first thing they did. It's so fundamental to us. And when we embrace what it can really do, which I think most of the time we don't always know, or we don't understand, or we forget what it can really do for us. When we really embrace that transformative power of what singing is and what it can do, it changes everything. And so the way that we approach, a lot of times, the way that we approach our teaching is through body awareness. And so your body is so driven by your unconscious. Like, everything we do is just on autopilot, because if you were trying to be conscious of everything your body did, your head would explode. It has to be that way. But your process of learning how to sing is bringing your awareness to these unconscious habits that your body has, so that you can then change them. You can't change them if you're not aware of them. And so I came across this amazing quote the other day by Carl Jung, who is famous. He basically helped to invent psychology. But he said that basically the point of life, or the true pinnacle of a hero's journey, if anybody's into the hero's journey thing, is it's the triumph of the conscious over the unconscious. And so for me, at least, singing is a perfect exercise in bringing your consciousness into all of the parts of yourself that are unconscious, through your body, but through your mind, through your emotions. It's the whole package is right there in singing. Like Abby, you said, the process of singing is the process of becoming a full human, and that was so perfect. It hits to this exactly. And so when we experience new emotions, when we sing or when we hear somebody else singing, we attend a performance. And I can think of several handfuls of performances where I've gone, where I experienced a new emotion that I had not experienced before. You get new perspectives. You gain new perspectives on your life, on other people, and on the world. And so when you gain those new perspectives, you're going to approach the whole world in a totally different way. And we have that, as singers, we have that power to change somebody's emotional state and therefore to change their perspective on life.
And the idea that if when we are on a stage, we inspire one person, we create empathy or compassion in one person where there wasn't any before, then that person goes into the world and deals with everyone around them differently. And they can inspire someone else to do something that is kind and compassionate where they might not have before. And it's this ripple effect, this butterfly effect, that we have the power, our voices have the power to transform society, to change the way that people deal with each other and the way that we see each other and the way that we love each other. And I think especially in this political climate and this crazy place that we have been this year, there's nothing more needed than that.
Thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate being invited to be part of this. I'm inspired. I learn and take inspiration from all of you, and I love that we're bringing it back around to love and kindness. And so I would kindly like to say goodbye because I am going to need to step away. But this has really been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us. Bye.
Nice.
Bye. Thank you so much, Cynthia. It's been absolutely pleasure.
I also have to take off. I have a family
All right.
to arrive.